Welcome to Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby. I'm Gabby Loren.
And I'm Alie Valerio.
And today we are bringing back a Rabbi Teller from Los Angeles and JHub LA, because he is going to be going over why strengthening our connection to a higher power is important, part 2. All right, so Rabbi Teller, thank you again for coming back. You were actually our first guest, I believe, on our podcast when we started this like 4 months ago.
Wow.
So we're excited to have you again.
Really appreciate having you guys back, and thank you again for the opportunity. It really is quite special, so thank you.
Of course, you're quite special as well, and you always have the answers, we feel. So we wanted to ask you a few questions, going more in depth into our last conversation. A lot of people have these ideas about God and what God is and who God is, but how much is really up to us and how much is up to free will and divine providence? We've asked this a few times with a few different rabbis, but we want to get your perspective on this. Is God in control or are we in control?
Okay, excellent question, Gabby. Thank you, and thank you, Alie. So, from my understanding, and again, these are very, very, very complex topics. So, to boil it down, let's look at it as there are two different perspectives here. One perspective is a perspective that I, you, Alie and Gabby, all human beings have one perspective. And then there is another perspective, and we'll call it the perspective of God's. So there's a God perspective, and then there's a man perspective. So what does that mean, my perspective? We've heard, let me take a step back. We have heard these concepts that God might be beyond time and space. God is not governed under a world of time and space. This is something that is common in our Jewish tradition, that we will say God is beyond time and space. God is not finite. We can't govern God. God is beyond all of that. Now, how is that possible? Because we operate in a world, we as human beings operate in a world of time and space. So what does that do for me? That we're supposed to be in Judaism, we're supposed to believe that there is one God. He is all powerful. This creator is all powerful beyond time and space. So we as finite beings, how do we have a relationship with something that is infinite, that is beyond time and space? So I can touch my arm and do this, I can do this, and that's something that I'm within a realm of time and space. But God, who's supposedly running the world, is beyond time and space. So I wanted to give that introduction. So every decision that I make, every decision that Gabby, Alie, every listener that's listening right now, it is predicated by time and space. So what does that mean? I have free will to do this. I have free will to do this. I have free will to do this. That is my free will. And I can choose at every second of my being to choose what I want to do. Now, take that, remove that, put that to the side. Now say, well, wait a minute. There's something called God over here, or let's just say up here. God knows that I'm going to do this. God knows that I'm going to do this. God knows that I'm going to do this. God knows, yes, God knows that I'm going to do everything that I'm going to do. But I don't know that I'm going to be doing what I'm going to be doing, because I have free will to make that decision right here, right now, at every second of the way.
But the thing is, Rabbi, okay, so we all have free will. I can touch my nose, I can touch you, I can hug you, I can choose to keep kosher, this and that. We're constantly choosing things on a daily basis, but sometimes, and I think Gabby and I both, experience this, and especially meeting you, it's like divine intervention. Like it kind of happens at the right time, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, and then it leads you to do other things, and you greatly inspired us to do this podcast. So that felt more like a divine guidance kind of thing. But sometimes it's hard to recognize that there is God in daily actions. Do you think that God is basically controlling everything we do?
So good. That was going to be my next point. So that was a good question leading up to that. So I have choices every second of my day to make a choice whether or not I want to turn right, or whether or not I want to turn left, whether or not I want to go up, or whether or not I want to go down. The question is that do I have the choice or the free will to acknowledge the messages that God gives me. So let's take Alie and Gabby, breaking bread with Alie and Gabby. Alie and Gabby, you know, I met you guys how many months ago? 9 months ago? 10 months ago? You both were in a seminar that we had. Gabby, I've known you a little bit longer, but we were both in a seminar together. And you had said to me both, hey, you know what? We want to start a podcast together. And you know what? That's what I heard. We want to start a podcast together. But you know what? Life takes a toll. You guys are busy. You guys have this job. You guys have that job. You have everything. And you know what? It presents itself. But for whatever reason, 10 months ago, it didn't work for you. But you know what? 4 months ago, when we all went through a global pandemic and everything was presented to you at the right time, at the right place, and you know what? You both clicked and said, oh my gosh, we need to do this. Because you know what? If we don't do this now, when we have a captive audience, and obviously this was something that was extremely important for us to do, but we needed a little bit of a push or a little bit of a nudge or a little bit of a kick. I would like to think, and Judaism would like to think, that, you know what? God puts you in the right place at the right time. And it happened to be that you guys had enough free will to pay attention to, okay, you're going to give me credit. No. The alignment of the world at that moment during a pandemic gave you both enough inspiration to say, you know what, now is the time that we need to do this. However, there are plenty of opportunities where we say that we're going to do something and we go right by it and we don't pay attention to it at all. Why did that happen? Because you know what, maybe that was not the right time or the right place for that message to seep in. But for whatever reason, I'm using both of you as an example. Whatever you both were going through in your own personal lives, you guys can do the math. I know your personal lives, but I'm not going to share this on this podcast. However, whatever you both needed to do, that was the right timing. And God said, you know what? I'm going to give you a little bit of a matana, a kiss, a gift, and I'm going to hand it over to you. And now you guys need to decide what to do with that. So you know what? We have free will to decipher, to pay attention to the message that God is giving us every step of the way. And we have to choose whether or not we are going to interpret it and choose to act the way that it's appropriate to. So hopefully that answered your question a little bit as well.
Yes. And is it safe to say that by strengthening our connection to Hashem and a higher power, that we will begin to notice these divine providences more so than just blowing over it and not really understanding why we were put in this position at this time to have this come into our life, you know, and so on?
Great question. And going back to using examples with Alexandra Valerio, and Gabrielle Loren Shutter, you know, it happens to be that you, Gabby, are a dancer and you, Alie, are a personal trainer. So what ends up happening is that you guys know that in order to become a good dancer, in order to become stronger, you need to work that muscle. So in order for you to get muscle memory, you have to consistently do the exercise over and over and over and over again. So you know what? Obviously, the first time you experience God and say, oh my gosh, God is giving me this message, it might be a foreign concept to you. You might need it like glaring in your face, kind of like splitting of the sea of reeds. It needs to be where like, oh my gosh, the sea has split in order for me to get it. But you know what? Over time, you start noticing all those little things, the nuances, the things that God is putting in front of you. And what ends up happening is you say, wow, you know what? God, every second of my day is sending me messages. I'm now got it attuned like a Richter scale. At first, we're up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then you know what? You start getting sensitive enough that you're like in the middle. And you know what? A little slight adjustment, you start feeling like, wow, you know what? I know what I need to do to get calibrated. So yes, I like to use that analogy that like anything in life, these seemingly small things will become completely heightened the more you start experiencing it and the more you start becoming aware of how the hand of God, as we call it in Hebrew, hashgacha pratit, or hashgacha pratis. It's really the divine inspiration, the divine hand of God who is there every second of the way. And ultimately you will become more heightened by that.
Amazing. So basically our answer is that God is always intervening in our lives every single day. And it's a matter of us choosing whether or not we can connect to that and then do something with that and use our divine will to like move forward. And it's funny too, because you put us at a Shabbat dinner together before COVID started, like literally the last Shabbat before COVID. And that's when Gabby and I were talking and she was like, let's just do it. And I was like, okay, fine, let's just do it. But like, that was divine intervention too. Okay. One more thing to like piggyback off that. So let's say you want to start strengthening your connection to this higher power, to God. Like, how does one start doing that?
So there are 6 constant in the Torah, which is our guidebook for living. There are 613, we call them mitzvot, or known as commandments that God gave to the Jewish people. And these are 613 opportunities for man, and I'll say man and woman, to connect to God. Again, it's like a relationship. I can choose whether or not I want to connect to it, or I can choose not to. And you know what? It doesn't make me any less of a person if I choose not to. And, you know, if I want to have a close relationship with you, Gabby, or with you, Alie, I'll do things to you. I will give to the relationship. I will nurture the relationship so I can be closer to you. The same type of relationship applies to God. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person if I choose not to have a relationship with you. I just need to give to the relationship. And therefore, it's going to be a heightened relationship. So let's use an example. I said there are 6 constant opportunities that I, as a man and a woman, can be completely connected to God. And one of those mitzvot that I have on me is to love God. I have a mitzvah to love God. Now you might say to me, Rabbi, how am I able to love God if I can't do this to God? If I can't do this to God, like I can point at you, Gabby, and I can point at you, Alie, and I can have a relationship with you. But how can I have a relationship with God if God is not tangible? I would ask that question to you. So I'll give you the answer. Is that in order for me to love God and to strengthen that relationship, I have to acknowledge all the beautiful things, all the wonderful things that God does for me, Rabbi Teller, for you, Alie Valerio, for you, Gabrielle Loren Shutter, on a daily basis. So what would heighten that situation for me? So I can see, oh my gosh, God is present at every second of the day. I like quoting this. This is the Rambam. Rambam is also known as Maimonides. He was a great sage who lived in the year 1200, Common Era, one of the greatest, most prolific Jewish sages that we had. And he said, in order to love God, in order to see the prolificness, the gratitude, the magnitude of God, is that we have to see all the things that God does for me every second of the way on a daily basis. So what would that be? For instance, the fact when I open my eyes, the fact that I'm opening up my eyes, and like the fact that my eyelids work, the fact that I'm able to see, the fact that I'm able to smell, the fact that my digestive system is working properly, the fact that I'm able to digest food, the fact that I'm able to like do this with my finger. If I really stop to think about all the wonderful things that God does for me every second of the way, I would have an ultimate appreciation that like nothing is by chance. Everything, there's every reason to be gracious, to have gratitude, and to realize there's nothing to complain about. There's nothing to be upset about because God is doing miracles for me every second of the day. And when I stop and say, what an unbelievable thing, I'm not going to be upset. And I'm going to be like, God is everywhere at all times, every second of the way. Even when I stub my toe, even when I get a parking ticket, there's a reason why I got the parking ticket. There's a reason why I stubbed my toe. There's a reason why Alie and Gabby were at the same Shabbat table together. There's a reason why we all are going through a pandemic right now. You just now need to stop, take a step back and say, that's the reason why.
Interesting. So you're connecting mitzvot also to strengthening your connection with our higher power, God. So in this process, who is God? do we identify God as a person, a spiritual being, an energy source? And why do we believe there is only one God?
Okay, so lofty, good question. Very good question. Thank you for that.
Oops.
Yes. A good book, I will say to start off, a good book to read, The Way of God by Rabbi Mosha Hayam Lusato. And he enumerates and delves into the way of God, which is also known as Derech Hashem. And he keenly describes the way of God. If we as human beings, or let's just say the Jewish people, we believe that God is all infinite, God is beyond time and space, then how could there be two infinite beings? Just by definition, by saying two infinite beings, that means one is more infinite than the other. You have to then compare. And that's something that we don't do. We have to say God is one. God, and when I say God is one, you visualize what that means, God is one. God, we don't even know, we can't even really conceive what that means, God is one. God, that's just something for us to put it into a mnemonic or something that can make sense with us. But really, Rabbi Lusato in Derech Hashem is explaining this and saying, like, we really, really, really can't even understand what that means, an infinite being beyond time and space. You know, if I were to use an analogy, let's say God is up here and we're all down here. And let's say you had to look at, like, you remember movies, how they had, like, you know, film, and you would take the film and you would like imagine take it from one side of the room and put it to the other side of the room, and you can see the entire movie on a film strip. When we're going through it, we're like going through it, like linearly going through it. God, imagine, is above it and is seeing time as one big film strip. So that, again, is it to answer your question simply, as best as I can, is that being beyond time and space, and being infinite means that it's all powerful, all knowing, and there can't be anything that preceded it, and there can't be anything in front of it. It can't be anything above it. It can't be anything below it. It's all powerful. It's all knowing. It created everything beyond what we know as a physical and tangible world, if that makes any sense.
It does, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for that explanation.
Good question. So, okay, we're all under one God and we're all Jewish people. Why are there different sectors of Judaism? Like, why is there like Hasidism and like Chabad, and like where does this all stem from, and how can we all be Jews if there's different sectors?
And if you can explain what those sectors are too, for the audience that may be confused, like, what is Hasidim?
Okay. So again, imagine God spoke to Moses. This is how our tradition goes. God spoke to Moses up on a mountain known as Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. God gave over all of the Torah, all of our rules, all of our stories, everything that we're supposed to follow to Moses for 40 days and 40 nights. And Moses took down all those rules and he wrote what's called the Torah. There's obviously a lot more of detail, and I'm not going to go into it right now, but just take what I'm saying, okay? There's rules and regulations. Every Jew is supposed to follow the letter of the law, what it says in the Torah. Now, Gabby,
Yes.
do you have a different style than Alie? No, you guys are exactly the same, right? You're
Style
exactly
of
the same.
what?
Huh? Style of fashion. I mean, this is not meant to be controversial or anything like that. I'm trying to prove a point right now.
No,
So
we do not have the same style.
You do not have the same style, but hey, do you know what? Are you still friends with Rabbi T?
Yes.
Okay. So here's what I'm trying to say here is that, you know what? You're both, to use this analogy, you can still be students or participants of JHub LA. But you know what? Your way of expression or the way of connection is a little bit different in how you both decide to dress, how you decide to converse, how you decide to have a relationship in this world. So I'm going to take a step back. I used an analogy a little bit premature. So what I'd like to say is that we can all follow the same Torah. We can all follow the same Torah, but based off of many years of Jewish people being in what's known as diaspora. Diaspora means out of the homeland of Israel. It means there's been 2,000 years where Jewish people have lived in Yemen, have lived in Poland, have lived in Morocco, have lived in Germany. I'm just naming 4 places. Just the pure fact of living in these places, the way of the land could have an effect on Jews and how they decide to colorfully practice their Judaism based off of the region and where they are living, if that answers it. Also, there are some sects of rabbi or sects, we call it sect, S-E-C-T-S. There are some sects, not sects, but sects of
Thanks
Judaism.
for clarifying.
Thank you. Those, I'm just having a hard time saying it, so I wanted to.
It's a hard word.
It is.
It's a tongue twister.
It's a tongue twister. So what I'm saying is that, you know what? Some rabbis have said, you know what? I'm just a little bit more colorful. I'm just a little bit more, need a little bit more jumping up and down, like, hip hop hooray. I need a little bit more of like that feeling, that spiritualness. So there have been rabbis who have said, you know what? We're not going to deviate from what the 613 mitzvot or opportunities are, what the halacha, what the laws are of what the Torah is saying. We're not going to deviate from that. However, though, with our expression based on our rabbi, who was this larger than life type of individual who connected to Judaism by singing, by dancing, by depths of secrecy of Torah, you know what? It kind of showed itself as its own separate way of following the 613 commandments. So, for instance, there are what's known as Hasidut, Chassid, to be a Hasid. The word Hasid means to go a little bit above and beyond just the letter of the law. So a Chassid, look at me. I would classify myself as a traditional Jew who keeps 613 commandments. I try to keep Shabbat. I try to keep kosher. I try to follow all the holidays. But you know what? Hey, Rabbi T, you look kind of clean cut. Are you different than that other Orthodox or traditional Jew who would classify himself as traditional, but he's got these things coming out of his hair and he's got this big beard and he wears this funny looking hat? Like, are you different than him? Not really. We both keep the 613 commandments, but his expression and how he connects to the mitzvot is a little bit differently than how I would connect to the mitzvot. And there, within Hasidut, like there happens to be over 200 sects of Hasidic types of customs, depending on if you're from this area of Poland, or from this area of Austria, or from this area of Latvia. Based on your region, you might do something a little bit different, and it might mean that you might dress a little bit different. But to answer it, trying to answer it, we're all following the same Torah. We're all trying to connect to God through all the same different types of mitzvot, but the custom might be a little bit of a deviation, if that makes any sense.
I have a question for you. The Hasidim, don't they also in certain communities like not use the internet and technology and things like that? And where does that come from? Is this in a book like that's connected to Torah, or is this something that like their head rabbi is in charge of? Like, where did those kind of differentiations come in?
Now, I would like to say that Judaism is not like other religions. where it's considered prohibitive and it's considered, what's the word I'm looking for? Bad, negative. I mean, Judaism would like to, we want to derive pleasure from this world. We want to get as much as we can from this world. It's not saying one cannot have, marital relations. One can't, eat food. One can't not enjoy life. Just the opposite. Judaism would say that we need to enjoy life to its fullest. The greatest pleasure in life is to have pleasure with God. And you know what? Certain things that we do, physical things that we do in this world, hopefully will be a gateway or a path so we can have a closer relationship to God. So we are different than other religions where we say, you can't not do this, you can't not do this, you cannot do this. However, there's a time and a place for everything that we do. And there are certain things that we have in the Jewish religion, which would be fences. There are certain fences that we have, that we do to protect us so they don't necessarily hurt us. So just like you would put a fence around a pool, so you don't want a child to jump in the pool, so God forbid they can hurt themselves, we put certain fences around ourselves. So maybe at times things which might be provocative, things which might be negative on the outside world, we might put a fence or a restriction around it just to protect us. That you can't have everything anytime, whenever you want it, right here, right now. So Judaism would say, to go to your point, Gabby, is that, it's not that we don't have internet or can't, have cell phones. Sometimes there are certain things on the internet that might be dangerous or might not be most conducive for you, or you need to put filters on just so you can, hopefully have a more of appreciation. So those things which are provocative don't desensitize you or oversensitize you in certain areas. So, the Torah tries to keep people in check as much as possible so they can, see the world in a pure way or have a closer relationship with God, if that answers your question.
It kind of all makes sense when you look at it, the perspective of what was the beginning of time, Adam and Eve, and that story, and how you weren't supposed to eat from the forbidden fruit, right? The tree.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's like the same thing in today's society, is like, for Hasidim especially, if there's a little bit more filters there, like for example, technology and social media, it is for your benefit to not give into temptation of becoming, less pure, I guess. Right?
Yeah. It does go back to that story. I don't know if this is the time or place to go into the story of Adam and Eve, in eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We have this ability as human beings. We are always tempted. We always want desire. We always want stimulation. So this goes back to your question of using free will. Let's use an example. Alie, you have clients. You're a personal trainer. You have clients. You might have clients. Personally from your own experience. Hey, you know what? Get up early in the morning. You're most productive. Your endorphins are higher. Your testosterone is higher. You're most fresh in the morning. Wake up early and start your exercises early in the morning. You know what? So you would tell the person, hey, get up out of bed, whatever the time, choose a time, 6 a.m. And you know what? Start your exercising early in the morning. But you know what a person is saying? I'm too tired. Alie, I'm too tired. Alie, I can't do this. Alie, I don't want to do this. So what does the person do? They wake up in the morning and they say, Alie, I don't want to get up out of bed. So they have a free will decision. I can stay comfortable in bed, not get my workout, and stay under the covers, or you know what? I can get up out of bed, be more productive, do my 100 push-ups, do my burpees, and you know what? Feel like I've accomplished more and I'll feel better about myself. That is what we would call a true free will decision. But you know what? We want to do the thing which is more comfortable to us rather than doing what's the right thing. So free will decision tells us, I want to do the right thing, but our body, our temptation, our desire tells us you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too this, you're too that, you're too lazy, and you know what? It's better to stay in bed. Don't get out of bed. So to your point, Alie and Gabby, every second of the day, we have to say, you know what? What's best for me? And I need to have free will to get myself up out of bed in the morning so I can connect to God. Or choose not to connect to God at that moment, if that answers your question.
100%. I actually just had an epiphany that something about Judaism that I think is really special is that we have the 613 mitzvahs that we follow, but there's so many different ways that you can follow them. And that's what makes Jews so unique and special. And like what could make me like secular, and then you were Shuva, right? Because you weren't raised religious and then became religious. And then, Gabby has a different relationship with God too, but we're all considered Jews. And that's really, really beautiful and really special. So I just want to encourage everyone who's listening to this now is like, there's no right way or wrong way to get a higher connection to God, but all that matters is that you're actually actively trying and seeking and learning. So that was my
we're always on a spectrum. We're either going up or down, and there's nothing wrong with, it's not all or nothing. It's a journey, so we're always on this journey, and there's always a opportunity to connect. So you know what, right now, I'm feeling lazy. Do I not want to connect right now? Yeah, I don't want to connect right now. Does that mean you're a bad person? No. It just means, okay, right now, I'm using my free will to stay on the couch and be lazy right now. Okay, that's your choice. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. And I think that's where people might get, when it comes to religion, it's like the fear. No, it's like we all have choices, and you know what? We can all, you're a good person regardless. And I think that's the thing that we all need to acknowledge is that we're all good people. We're all trying to connect, and every opportunity is an opportunity for connection.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Rabbi. We so appreciate you connecting with us today to discuss ways in which we can strengthen our connection to Hashem. And I feel like, again, this has been another really I don't even know what the word is. This has been such a great conversation. It's really been fabulous. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this, and let everybody know how they can connect with you if, they want to attend your lectures or be a part of JHub and see what you're up to.
So yeah, thank you, Gabby and Alie, for the opportunity again. I'm a rabbi here in Los Angeles, Southern California. I've been running an organization now called JHub LA. We're connecting Jews through spiritual community, finding a soulmate, classes, and you can find me on Facebook as Gavin Mordechai Teller, or on Instagram at Rabbi Teller, or on Instagram at JHub LA. And you can look me up. We have a website, www.jhubla.org, and that's how you can find me. And
Amazing.
Welcome. Anybody can stop by, can ask a question, and open for the opportunity.
Are there also places for people to donate to JHub LA if someone wants to do?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, we have Venmo and PayPal. You can Venmo us at JHub LA, or you can go onto our website, www.jhubla.org, and there will be a nice red button saying donate here. So again, just very grateful to both of you for the opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to connect with your audience. And hopefully, we can all, one final thing that I would leave you is just, every moment is an opportunity for growth and connection. And we're not bad people. We're not bad people. We're good people. And we're always trying to do the right thing. And sometimes we'll slip. Sometimes we'll fall. Sometimes we'll stumble. But you know what? Every second is an opportunity to connect again. So again, to go back to your point, Alie and Gabby, you said God is always sending you messages. You might have blown it 2 seconds ago, but you know what? Now you have another opportunity for redemption. So that's where we're at.
Amazing.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon.
Thanks, Rabbi.
All right, bye.
Conversation. Thank you.
So, Alie, what did you think about everything Rabbi Teller said today?
He's just the best. I mean, like, he provides such an awesome platform for us. You know, he goes live on Facebook every single day since COVID started. He does these classes like 3 times a week. He's trying to like match people together. Did you see one of our fellow people just got engaged recently? It's just like,
Yes.
it's true. The proof is in the pudding. And like, all that matters is that you're just continuously learning and growing and trying to be better, right?
Definitely. I love learning. And I think Rabbi Teller is such a unique way of connecting to people and to such a broad range of audience and demographic. His JHub community, as you know, consists of people in their 20s, 30s, and even 40s. And he has built just such a welcoming place for people to question God, to question how to have a connection with God, to question, you know, who God is, just like we're doing here today. And I really appreciate that in him. I found like a lot of these answers to be interesting. And I think that what's so amazing about this platform is that we're able to speak to all these different rabbis, and every rabbi has a different answer and a different perspective on these questions we present. So it's really amazing to just inquire with each one and then come to our own conclusions based off what each person says and how we feel. So yeah.
I totally agree. I love the way that he described like the different sectors of Judaism too, because I've always wondered that is like, what is Hasidism? Because Hasidism to me was explained that it's like, it was like the Renaissance in Judaism, because they used to just like read the Torah. They were like Orthodox. They would read the Torah and like then they followed the Torah. But then Hasidism was this, I believe, rabbi, oh gosh, I don't know, I'm gonna have to look that up. But he was like, well, we want to find a way to connect ourselves through like the lessons of the Torah and make it more like humanistic. So I always consider it like a Renaissance. And then Chabad is like the little sectors that are all over the world. And that's also like incorporating Kabbalah, like when we had the millennial rabbi on. So I just love that there is no like right or wrong way to practice Judaism. You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. It's so cool how, for the most part, if you find a good rabbi in a good community, you are always welcome to that community. You're always welcome to ask questions. And if you're not welcome to do those things, then you're in the wrong place. And I highly encourage you to seek out better community and a more supportive community in that.
I agree. So we've both been, part of JHub. I know you've been part of JHub for longer. You did the Israel trip last year. There's also Aish. If you guys go to aish.com, which Rabbi Teller used to be a rabbi with Aish too, and Denbo. Where else can people explore Judaism? Chabad.org. Where else?
Yeah, all of those places are great. Your local shul maybe, or connect with Rabbi Bortz, the millennial rabbi. He seems amazing, and I love his programming. He has that soulful living program that he does. It's a 6-week immersive course, but it's not really a course. It's like an interactive experiential thing. Check out his website. We featured him on a recent episode about Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
And then if you're local to LA too, we have Pico Shul, which we had Rabbi Yonah and Rachel Bookstein on. Let us know too, guys, if there are specific rabbis or Jewish leaders. Oh my God, we're gonna have Gedalia Fenster on soon, who we both love and follow. Really find what resonates with you. How has your relationship with God changed over the course of this whole like Corona thing, Gab?
I feel as though I'm reconnecting with seeing God's presence more in my life since Corona began. I'm a lot more present just in the world because we're not running this fast-paced life, trying to keep up with the Jones. I'm just kidding. But we're home for most of us, that are working remote or just at home, not working and unemployed. We are home and we have the time to quiet the mind, shut down the noise, center ourselves. And by doing so, and by connecting more, we are also seeing God's connection in our lives more. How about you, Alie?
What specifically have you seen God more in your life?
Man, there's so many things. Just like different instances, kind of like what Rabbi was bringing up. When you've been in a certain place at a certain time and something happens and you could take a step back from that experience and say, oh, okay, now I understand why this happened, or why I was put in this place, or why I didn't go to this place. I see that every day. There's just so many things. I know I brought it up on previous episodes, but just when I connected more to meditation these last few weeks, and we meditated, a group of my friends and I meditated on a friend of ours who was in the hospital in a coma from a car accident. And miraculously, 30 minutes after this meditation, this loving kindness meditation, she had woken up from a coma and she was the next day released from the hospital. So
Wow.
Seeing the power we all have in our lives, seeing that these messages that we're receiving in these quiet moments during meditation or centering ourselves are coming through easier. We also talked about it with Rabbi Bortz, how like the Wi-Fi connection, like you connect to, God in this way. And it's, said that in Jewish mysticism, it's easier to connect with him when it's late at night and everyone's asleep. Well, it's the same as your mind. When you quiet it and you take out the noise, there's less commotion going on. You have a direct path to God, and your communication is heard and felt a lot stronger. Just like when you go to Israel, the connection is a lot quicker, a lot faster. You feel God's presence more easily. You see where he is in your life. In Israel, had many God divine intervention experiences. From previous episodes, talked about my naming ceremony and how I came about my name, and the fact that my same name was the name of another woman who's a glass blower in Spot, and just so happened to be a friend of Chaya Sarah, who's also been on a previous episode, and she sent me a personal video message saying Mazel Tov on your naming, and we're name twins. And I got a personal video message from her congratulating me, when she's the reason why I even went with the name, because I came up with it and everyone was like, oh no, we've never heard this name before. We don't know if this is a Hebrew name. We're going to have to look this up. And I Googled it and she popped up on Google. And then what are the chances of 2 weeks later, she's sending me a personal video message? Like, that was divine providence. That was supposed to be my name. And the fact that we were able to connect over it after, like just shortly after, is mind blowing. There's still millions of people in Israel. So it's kind of crazy. And this all happened in Spot. Like, I looked her up in Spot and she lived in Spot. She's a glass blower in Spot. So I was just like mind blown.
I love that. Wait, your Hebrew name is Chaya Sarah.
My Hebrew name is Sheva Chaya, and Chaya Sarah is a friend who we've had on and interviewed on this podcast, who had stayed with another Sheva Chaya that is a glass blower in Spot for like a week or so right after I came back from Israel, and sent me that personal video message from her.
What does shava mean?
So Sheva is the number 7. And Chaya is life, but also a soul level. So I picked Sheva because I believe it was in my original name, and it is a powerful number, the number 7. If you believe in numbers and their significance and meaning, just like every Hebrew letter is associated with a number, there is always significance to it. So 7 is very powerful, and I really identified with it. Loved how, like, 7 nights, or 7 days to create, and 7 days we rested, whatever, 6 days to create, 7 days we rest. Just 7 days in a week. There's so many like symbolic things to the number 7. And then a Chaya soul level is the highest level you could take your soul if you're not like a rabbi or a prophet. So again, like I've said previously, I like working on myself. I like bringing myself to a higher vibration, working at my soul, because that's what we do here on earth in this physical space, to connect with Hashem and to be a better soul. So Sheva Chaya it is, and at first, like I said, people were like questioning it. Like, are you sure about this? Because it's not common. Like Rachel is common, or like Chaya Sarah, who we've interviewed, or just Chaya. There's so many common names that come straight from Torah, but this is a combination of 2 powerful names that I put together. And my research brought me to another person with that name, who then connected with me 2 weeks later. So it was such a powerful, godly experience.
I feel like that's really the take-home point of this whole episode, is that Judaism it's really a relationship, and it's a feeling, and it can really be taken whichever way you want it to take. Like, as long as you're exploring the different mitzvahs and like what connects with you, and the fact that you can even pick your own Hebrew name, like it just furthermore proves that we're all like, our Jewish souls are within our bodies, and they're just like trying to connect to Hashem in the best way possible. And there's no right or wrong way to do that. It's just whatever's personal to you in this lifetime. And you're constantly going to be tested by people too, who, I don't know if you believe in like tikkun. You know about tikkun, Gab?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And
So, like,
Kabbalah.
right. So that's Kabbalah, right? Which is also a part of Judaism, is that people come and test you, and they're testing your soul to rectify your whatever past thing you did in your past. And so to rectify that in this lifetime. So anyway,
Did you experience anything during quarantine and this whole pandemic where you saw God specifically? And I know you have your story from years ago when you first moved to LA and all that, but what happened in these last 4 or 5 months that really spoke to you?
You know, I was finally able to fully keep Shabbat over the past few months because I didn't have to travel. You know, I think up until recently, we've kind of done Shabbats at other people's homes. Every time I do Shabbat at home, and every time I light the Shabbat candles, I feel this wave of divine oneness. You know, like when we lit the candles last Friday, I was like, every time I do that, I just feel calm. Like, no matter what is happening in the world, I just feel this presence of just chill calmness, and like everything is how it is meant to be. So I guess going back to what Rabbi was saying is that I feel Hashem's presence every single time I pause. And I stop moving so quickly because he's literally with us at every single moment. And I think it's important for us to recognize that even crappy things that happen are maybe blessings in disguise.
Yeah. And it's always a great way to look at life in general.
All right. Well, I think we better sign off. Thank you guys again for tuning in on another episode of Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby. We hope to see you next time.
Yes, we'll see you next time, you guys. Thanks again. Please subscribe and like and leave us a comment if you're loving what you're seeing. We'll see you next time, right, Curbs? Love your 2 favorite Jewish girls.